I'm fascinated by Assange and you know, horrified in some ways, but I wouldn't sort of flat out call him despicable, because I think he's done some extraordinary things. I think it's hard because only somebody who is that, separated from the sort of the swim of life and that self-reliant could have achieved what he did, So I think it's very, very difficult for him to separate, for example, the idea of the mission and the person, from the beginning he was tweeting about us as the anti-WikiLeaks movie, and I think anybody who sees the movie would see that that's not true, but he really does equate himself and WikiLeaks, and I think that is a blind spot for him. I'd wanted to make a political film for a long time, and what really interested me here was that, and I really think it's a rare bird, it's not, political films tend to come from a specific ideological point of view and tend to you tend to go in knowing what to feel about something and leave the same way, only you feel more of it or you feel it in a more intense way. But I really like the fact that this ultimately, I think it was something we tried hard. I tried hard once I got involved with the movie, and then in the actual shooting of the movie with the actors, really push further and further. That sense that just when you thought you could figure out, who was right, who was wrong, it would twist on itself. So that, because it is an extraordinarily complicated story, and there is no simple right or wrong here, and there is both danger and great value in what Assange did, So how do you express all that and get a conversation going? That was a challenge of the movie. But if you think of it, that's not so common, I mean, in among studio movies, and I feel it's been, there hasn't, frankly, the response has been extremely mixed so far, and I do feel as though part of me thinks, I've got a lot of thoughts about it, but part of me does think that this, underlying it all, is this kind of idea that, certainly I think a lot of people think it's too early, but the actual mechanics of making drama out of it, which is basically what do you choose to include and what are you leaving out, is so in everybody's face, especially, people who write about movies who are journalists, they know that we're not including the rape charges, allegations, and they know we are including people like Daniel Berg's girlfriend, who nobody's ever heard of, So automatically there's this thing, well, this story is still happening, and there's almost a sort of like, a sort of what gives you the right to make those choices because we all own the story. It's an interesting thing. I can't think of that many other examples of something that's so happening and so well known, That's what excited me about it. It was sort of like, wow, it's like, it felt very different from other movies, and there was a chance to really, and to my mind, you come up, big question like, why do it, And I think part of it is, frankly, that, anything, a play of ideas or something like that, the stuff surrounding this stuff, this issue of privacy and transparency, entertainment is a weird form of journalism now. The lines are blurred. So the fact that you could kind of swim around in these issues, within the kind of context of a journalistic thriller that hopefully keeps you kind of intrigued on a visceral level, The story does have a beginning, middle, and end. It's really the story of Daniel Berg's relationship with Assange, and how that occurred, while WikiLeaks was sort of growing and kind of coming to international prominence, and then fell apart after the, in the whole release of the war logs and diplomatic cables. And even though chronologically the rape sort of sneaks in there, it really was something separate from that relationship, So it did feel, and it's also just such a big thing to lay out there, isn't it? I mean, it becomes so distracting. Unfortunately, we did research, and that's the first thing that in America people think of when asked who Assange is. Isn't he the guy who they say raped somebody? So yeah, I mean, that's a complicated case. Not, I should say, and Alex Gibney laid this out really well in his documentary. Those it would appear that those things really happen, and it's not him being set up by anybody, as he suggests, and that is not, I think his most admirable, ploy, because I think he, even now, when the Snowden thing happens, to align himself as another political prisoner. There are ways in which you could see him as such, but literally he is there because he's unwilling to answer questions. Yeah, I mean, he's been all about transparency for the powerful, and when it comes to transparency, he doesn't understand how powerful he is and how powerful a figure. And so the fact that he is so thin-skinned and so, he was, even recently, asking people who work for the organization to sign non-disclosure forms, and I thought that's the ultimate irony, and that's what makes it a very good drama, because the seeds of his own downfall are right there in everything, all those qualities that made him create something so remarkable. Again, he always says it's because, and he's been using this argument. He used the argument with Benedict. Please don't do this movie. He was using it through journalists in Toronto, who had talked to him or talked to his representatives. It's always this altruistic, oh, why do that? Why talk about those things? Because it damages the cause. It doesn't damage the cause. The cause is separate from him, and he's done some damage to the cause. And I actually think one of the results of the movie, I hope, is that you can look at and be reminded of the great idealism that informed the enterprise, and separate the two ideas again, and actually sort of honor what it is that they did accomplish. It doesn't take that big a leap to watch Benedict as Sherlock and to imagine him as Assange. I mean, there's a continuum there. The great intelligence. More than that, I think he is. I mean, among that emerging group of like world-class actors of his generation. There's something. He's like a born entertainer, there's something. So I think, as you go through this movie, which might have in other hands been dry, there's just this twinkle to him that he was always looking for ways to kind of make it interesting, to captivate. And I think that was something we needed.